Okay, wonderful. All right. Good morning, devotees around the world. Today is June 18th, celebrating the transcendental appearance of their lordships, Nitai Sachisutta at ISKCON Portland, Nitai Sachinandana. And we'll begin reading Srimad Bhagavatam, first by singing. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavalabha Givaradari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Jashoda Nandana Rajajana Ranjana Jashoda Nandana Rajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Raja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Raja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Raja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada ki Srimad Bhagavatam ki Hare Krishna Jai Satchidananda Prabhu. Thank you. It's good to see your name and know you're here. Om Jnana Timidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapatantikam Katanchana Smrite Yasmin Dushkaram Sukaram Bhavit Vismrite viparitam syat Shri Chaitanyam namamitam. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Shrinvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyanta stohya bhadrani vidunoti sushitsatam. Nashta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavatir naishtiki. Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
गाड़ी लेके जानी पड़ेगी
Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya.
inside
Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya.
we came at 2
Today we'll be continuing the reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, Creation,
yeah, they all
chapter 12, the birth of Emperor Parikshit, and we are in verse 17.
यार ये लोगों ने तो कुछ नहीं करा सलाम प्राण प्रभु पूछ रहे थे बहुत बारी क्या करें तो मैंने उनको बोला था फ्लावर सब उधर म्यूट है ना म्यूट हो
So last week, Jai Sachinandana Prabhu
we asked lot of time
read 15 and 16, and today we will...
Nanda Prabhu, you might have to mute Jethachindan Prabhu. He's in
Excuse me?
temple. Can you mute Jethachindan Prabhu? I think he's in the temple.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So today we're reading verse 17. Pasmanamna Vishnurata iti loke bhavishyati na sandeho mahabhaga mahabhagavato mahan. Tasmanamna Vishnurata iti loke bhavishyati na sandeho mahabhaga mahabhagavato mahan. Tasmanamna Vishnurata iti loke bhavishyati na sandeho mahabhaga mahabhagavato mahan. If anyone would like to read, please give it a try. It's a beautiful verse.
Tasmanana Vishnurata iti loke bhavishyati na sandeho mahabhaga mahabhagavato mahan.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
तस्मन्नाम विष्णुरता इति लोके भविष्यति न संदेहो महाभागा महाभागवता महान. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yes, Tasman Nama Vishnu Rata Iti Loke Bhavisyati Na Sandeho Mahabhaga Mahabhagavato Mahan.
Thanks, Josh. So the synonyms in translation. Tasmat, therefore, Namna, by the name, Vishnu Rata, protected by Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, Iti, thus, Loke, in all the planets, Bhavishyati, shall become well known, Na, no, Sandeha, doubts, Maha Bhaga, most fortunate, Mahabhagavata, first class devotee of the Lord, Mahan, qualified by all good qualifications. It's nice to see the relationship between the Sanskrit words and the contemporary names that we have. Sometimes how we trace our descendants, or how we trace our ancestors, in pictures by identifying similarities, like an eyebrows or nose or mouth or hairline. We can trace sound vibration also this way. When we see namna and see that it's so simple to name, and na is in no. In case someone would like to know, for Loke, there's 14 planetary systems, and we know that there's different Bhagavatams, or there's different versions or different durations or lengths or details that are mentioned in the Bhagavatam for all those planets. But in all of them, this character is principal. This Maharaj Parikshit, he's the inciting incident for the Srimad Bhagavatam, and so it can't be told, or it's told in conjunction with him. And so in all those planetary systems, he's known. Once Srila Prabhupada described that true fame is being recognized as a devotee. And so Maharaj Parikshit is recognized on all those planetary systems. A third point is that the Vedas say that whenever a spiritual master repeats something 3 times, it should be particularly noted. It's like, since everyone had really good memory, generally things were repeated once, and a sharp student that's really paying attention would capture something. Prajalpa is the act of speaking unnecessarily about mundane topics. And so if you went to a spiritual teacher or any kind of teacher, one of their qualifications would be that they wouldn't speak on mundane topics. So anything that they were speaking was relevant. But how to distinguish something, because sometimes, in contemporary language, we say, literally to distinguish, okay, this is the important part of what I'm saying, or like, this is an important part, or we add qualifiers like, epic, or this is a particularly great thing. But previously, the convention to commemorate something that was significant would be to say something 3 times. And here, Maha, or great, is used 3 times to describe Emperor Parikshit. In Mahabhaga, as though he's very fortunate because he was born in a family of exalted people. Arjuna and the Pandavas and Maharaj Yudhishthir, they were all very dear friends of Krishna. When he showed up, and he doesn't show up often as Krishna, and so when he showed up, the people that he spent the most time with, or the souls that he spent the most time with, or the most intimate time with, were his family members. And the 5 Pandavas were his first cousins. And Emperor Parikshit is the grandson of those devotees. On top of that, we're reading in this chapter how Krishna made it a point to protect him while he was in the womb. And so he's fortunate because of that. He's fortunate because he met a pure devotee. That also makes us fortunate to come in contact with pure souls that can speak about Krishna from personal realization. And Shukadeva Goswami was that person. His father, and we repeat it all the time, but it's worth emphasizing, his father wrote down all of that knowledge that was conducive to self-realization. Anything that was worth knowing, even in terms of material development, in the karma section of the yoga, and everything that was worth knowing in terms of what is the relationship between the body and the mind and the soul, and what's the difference between a physical or temporary phenomenon opposed to a metaphysical and enduring phenomenon, or eternal phenomenon. And finally, what is the process by which the tiny part and parcel of the divine can elicit the attraction, or the protection, or the love, or the excellent love? Because we're already cared for by the divine. Bhakti yoga is that process of how can we awaken our awareness of that love, and how can we elicit, special attention, more than the attention of getting a body that develops subconsciously, without our attention. Beyond being put on a planet that has all the resources to carry out life, and where sunsets happen that elicit our appreciation for nature. How can we get a special type of love, where we can interact personally with this person? All of that relevant information was penned by Vyasadeva, and the culmination of all that knowledge was found in the Brahma Sutras. And the commentary of that very esoteric book, because it's written in aphorisms, it's written in such a way that only people that are familiar with the other text will be able to decode, okay, what is this line referring to, or what question is this verse solving? The natural commentary was given in the Bhagavatam. And then it's said in the beginning of the Bhagavatam that in his realization, or in his maturity. And why that word is relevant is because when we write something in our infancy, or when we write something in our novice stage, like musicians, there might be a lot of heart in something, but the kind of music that a master guitar player composes it seems effortless and flawless and powerful, and it can incorporate all of these different types of genres and styles and moods. And they're saying that the Bhagavatam was composed by the author, Srila Vyasadeva, in his maturity in the same way. And so the poetic style is beautiful. The meter is different here and there, and it accompanies the mood of what's being spoken of, and the essence is given also. So only the relevant details are mentioned. And that's why sometimes the Bhagavatam can seem to be jump around. And so at that stage, Vyasadeva spoke to his son, Shukadeva Goswami. So after having just such a noteworthy life and composing this wonderful book, he spoke to his son, who had assimilated it. And then that devotee, Shukadeva Goswami, spoke to this Emperor Parikshit. And so to give us a context of what fortune means, generally, fortune means what comes into our lives. And there's nothing more fortunate than meeting somebody who has real love for Krishna, because that love, it's so rare. It can't be acquired in the world in the same way that we acquire other things. Like, you can stumble on gold in California if you're around here in 1849. But you can't just stumble on love of God somewhere. That's it's living and beating within the heart of devotees, and it's transmitted from one person to another. So he's also fortunate because Mahabhagavata, he himself was a devotee, and that he spent his life looking for Vishnu, and then he also just had good qualities if he was compassionate. Later on, it will be described that Emperor Parikshit, he came across somebody committing a crime or torturing another living being by cutting off their legs. And though that person was deserving of death, they surrendered to Emperor Parikshit, and so he showed his compassion. He also showed forbearance, that he wasn't just a person that lived by the word of law, but rather by the spirit of the law. So, the Vedas, that they mention people that are allowed to be killed by the emperor, like, they've just committed so many wrongdoings. One of them is poisoning someone else, or another one is setting fire to the shelter where someone lives. They're like, all right, this is a no forgiveness kind of crime. But you can really see the compassion of a person when they decide that, well, even if the rules say you're allowed to be killed, which is something that some powerful people might appreciate, having a freebie, Emperor Parikshit, even in that time, he decided to show a higher virtue, which was compassion, and to banish that living entity to specific places, and to keep them out of other places where beings might gather. So that we should note that. that Maha is mentioned 3 times in terms of this personality. And that one thing that can do is to elicit our reverence and elicit our respect and elicit our special attention to the questions in the life of this individual. It's a way of putting a spotlight. Another way of understanding is it's a way of putting a spotlight on someone, but maybe 3. So without further ado, here's let's get to the translation, the purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. For this reason, this child will be known in the world as one who is protected by the personality of Godhead. O most fortunate one, there is no doubt that this child will become a first-class devotee and will be qualified with all good qualities. Purport. The Lord gives protection to all living beings because He is their supreme leader. The Vedic hymns confirm that the Lord is the supreme person amongst all personalities. The difference between the 2 living beings is that the one, the personality of Godhead, provides for all other living beings, and by knowing Him, one can achieve eternal peace. Katha Upanishad. Such protection is given by His different potencies to different grades of living beings. But as far as His unalloyed devotees are concerned, He gives the protection personally. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit is protected from the very beginning of his appearance in the womb of his mother. And because he is especially given protection by the Lord, the indication must be concluded that the child would be a first-grade devotee of the Lord with all good qualities. There are 3 grades of devotees, namely the Mahabhagavata, Madhyama Adhikari, and the Kanishta Adhikari. Those who go to the temples of the Lord and offer worshipful respect to the deity without sufficient knowledge in the theological science and therefore without any respect for the devotees of the Lord are called materialistic devotees or Kanishtadikari, the 3rd grade devotees. Secondly, the devotees who have developed a mentality of genuine service to the Lord and who thus make friendship only with similar devotees, show favor to the neophytes, and avoid atheists are called the 2nd grade devotees. But those who see everything in the Lord or everything of the Lord, and also see everything in an eternal relation to the Lord, so that there is nothing within their purview of sight except the Lord, are called Mahabhagavatas, or the 1st grade devotees of the Lord. Such 1st grade devotees of the Lord are perfect in all respects. A devotee who may be in any of these categories is automatically qualified by all good qualities, and thus a Mahabhagavata devotee like Maharaj Parikshit is certainly perfect in all respects. And because Maharaj Parikshit took his birth in the family of Maharaj Yudhishthira, he is addressed herein as the Mahabhagavata, or the greatest of the fortunates. The family in which a Mahabhagavata takes his birth is fortunate because due to the birth of a 1st grade devotee, the members of the family, past, present, and future, up to 100 generations, become liberated by the grace of the Lord, out of respect for his beloved devotee. Therefore, the highest benefit is done to one's family simply by becoming an unalloyed devotee of the Lord. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine. We'll read the verse one more time. Tasmanamna Vishnurata iti loke bhavishyati na sandeho mahabhaga mahabhagavato mahan. For this reason, this child will be known in the world as one who is protected by the personality of Godhead. O most fortunate one, there is no doubt that this child will become a first-class devotee and will be qualified with all good qualities. One thing of note here is that Srila Prabhupada, he delineates the 3 grades of devotees. Here, Mahabhagavata is mentioned by word, which is first class. And so first class is a way of saying best, but it's also, it refers to different ways that devotees have noticed that development of love and conviction and faith occurs. And so the delineation is in 3 categories. And so here Prabhupada gives the name as Mahabhagavata, Madhyama Adhikari, and Kanishta Adhikari. We shouldn't look at these as an opportunity for us to have reason to segregate or to compare and to put ourselves above or to even criticize. Because here, the Kanishta Adhikari is mentioned as, someone that doesn't have theological science and therefore without any respect for the devotees of the Lord are called materialistic devotees. This is an invitation for us to simply look inward, not to, see like, oh, is that person offering respect or is this person a Kanishta? This is for us to see, are we at this level? Even being a Kanishta Adhikari is a glorious thing. Adhikari means one who has a capacity for something, or one who has a quality to do something. And Kanishta simply means materialistic, but the Kanishta Adhikari is a person that recognizes the existence of God. And in the world, to recognize the existence of God is a rare thing. We know that there's 450,000 different types of human, bipedal beings, but that's among, 40,000. But there's 840 or 8,400,000 different types of living beings or different types of bodies that the soul can show up in. Sorry, 400,000. It's 400,000 different types of living beings. Anyone feel free to correct in the middle. Thank you. So there's 8 million types of bodies that the living being can show up in that doesn't have a capacity to recognize the existence of God. For the most part, the consciousness is just acting in a machine that's just doing fight or flight is what the scientists call it. It's basically just, finding a way to protect itself, looking for food, or being afraid of everything around it. Sometimes you can see, that squirrels and birds, they recognize friends, but how often do you see a squirrel offer dandavats or just put its hands together and not look for food and not space out, but to thank you, Krishna, for making trees that have nuts that fall on the ground. And all I need to do is just run around and look for nuts. Or how often do you see, birds, just sit down and, open a book and really just like us, wake up early, not for the sake of screaming to get food, but of just trying to listen to what Bhagavatam is about. So that's the special privilege of being in a human body, that we have the capacity to understand who God is. And I invite everyone to just survey what comes out in television or what we're advertised to do or what we're supposed to do as humans that live in civilized society. How often are we invited by our superiors to have a life of internal contemplation and to recognize God? That's actually one way we can see who our superiors are. Is our superiors, the best superior to accept is the one that recognizes their superior, and devotees are very expert at recognizing that. Yeah, for the most part, people that don't recognize who their superior is, like there's this one musician that when he received an award said, I would like to thank myself for believing in myself and showing up myself. Like that is the quality of pride and arrogance is not becoming, and it's not a quality that leaders have. It's not a quality that someone that deserves following has. So a Kanishta Adhikari, even in the grades of I mean, a Kanishta Adhikari is still a devotee, and so that should be seen as something that's it's worth aspiring for, to even be in a Kanishta Adhikari that recognizes that there is a temple where God has appeared and has made himself seen in the form of the Archa Vigraha, just so that we can offer our obeisances. Of course, God is everywhere, but we don't have the capacity to see that yet. We don't have the capacity to see the presence of God in all atoms and to see the presence of God in the heart of all living beings. The Kanishta Adhikari just sees, oh, God, this is a place where God is. This is a special place where I can, develop my qualities of reverence. As that devotee develops more relationship with the Lord in the temple, they'll, inspired by the prayers of others found in the Srimad Bhagavatam, or inspired by their own adhikari, or inspired by the Lord within the heart, they'll develop prayers to let me see you outside, or let me work for you. Now that I'm at this job, I have so much fun in the temple and I have so much fun with devotees, and everything else is miserable, but I have to work. I can't just stay in the temple all the time, maybe because, yeah, I don't have the capacity to be a monk, but let me see work as though it's a spiritual activity. Let me see being with my family as though it's a spiritual activity. Let me see walking as it's a spiritual thing. Let me expand your world. And that's a special a privilege that the soul has as well, that the soul is allowed to return material nature back to God and thus spiritualize it. This picture in the front of the Bhagavatam, shows the creation. The creation is 3/4 spiritual, and it's expanding, and that only 1/4 of the creation is material. But the devotee has the prerogative to return even an atom of that material back to the spiritual, and thus assist in the expansion of the spiritual world voluntarily. And so we do that by giving our consciousness and giving our prayers, and bringing a dandelion or a rose out from the road and bringing it to the altar. So that's somewhere between Kanishta and Madhyama. And Madhyama, Prabhupada mentions, is it makes that devotee sees 4 different categories. Not only do they see the Supreme Lord as the Kanishta sees, they recognize the devotee. The devotee is somebody who in whom not only is the Lord residing within, as all living beings are, but the devotee is somebody who's recognizing that and wanting to make a relationship. And they Prabhupada says something interesting here, is who thus make friendships only with similar devotees, which is a way of, if we read between the lines, it's to say that there are going to be devotees that have different moods and different different personalities, and who thus may rub with our personality. And this is a way of saying that's allowed to exist. One of my favorite things to remember is that in the spiritual world, people disagree on even the best way to serve Krishna, but that the qualification of the spiritual world isn't that everyone have the same opinion. It's simply that everyone love Krishna. So we don't need to have the same opinion here of what's the best way to serve. We simply need to gather around the idea that the same person should be served, which is Krishna. And that always brings me peace of mind, because, as I spend more time in this community of devotees, I see that there are there are different opinions, and in the material world, or the materialistic mentality uses that instance as a reason to discriminate or to segregate. For example, politics. In politics, we see that one side, or one group of people may believe that this is the right path, and another group believes that this is the right path. And because of that, they begin, generally in public discourse, they'll attack the character of another person without maybe using their intelligence to say, look, both of us agree that there should be some governance, or both of us should be some rules. So why don't we begin from the top of saying that, well, there should be some rules, what would be the best things, but there's never discourse because an opinion is different of how the same general thing should be done. So we don't arrive at the most important point, which is protection. And then it becomes the argument devolves. So, Krishna and friendship and respect should be principle, and opinions are just really secondary things. If somebody didn't speak, you wouldn't know their opinion, but they would still be a soul that deserves respect. So it's a privilege to get to hear somebody's opinion. It's a privilege to get to have someone reveal their mind to us. In the Nectar of Instruction, later we'll learn that that's one of the six displays of love, is to have somebody reveal what they think, and then the way to reciprocate with that properly is to keep it in confidence. And so we're actually given so many, it's the devotees that reveal to us how abundant love is actually. So many people, so many people are revealing how they feel. And that's an invitation for us to nurture and to care for that. So similarly, if a devotee reveals to us, a difference of opinion, it's a good exercise for us to be able to hold two things at once, to be able to hold the fact that, God loves this person, Krishna loves this person, and this person has a different personality than me. How can I use this as a stimulus to expand the field of my heart, to accommodate more than what I thought possible? Because ultimately the expansion of our heart, I actually don't understand how it happens. I think that from what I've heard from the scriptures, that we're actually very small, and that what's large and expansive is Krishna. So if I had to use my intelligence to understand how our heart expands, I would say that our tiny heart simply accepts more of what Krishna's world is like. It's not necessarily that our hearts literally get bigger, but we just recognize more of the fact of Vrindavan and the spiritual world and the spiritual planets they're full of acceptance, and they're full of a place where everyone has their place. I mean, in these small planets, we see that there's even a place where different forms of Krishna exist. Like there's a form where Ramachandra is performing his pastimes forever. And in one of the illustrations, you see that there's Buddha somewhere. So you see that there's ways that devotees reciprocate with the Supreme Person that are beyond what we do, but Krishna accommodates all of it. That's what makes him so special. And so the Madhyama can do that. They can make friendship with similar devotees, and here they show favor to neophytes. Another way that I've heard this read is that they show favor to innocents, or people who don't know about God. So this is the stimulus to speak about God. You see, our Christian brothers show up on the street and they preach the gospel. Prabhupada invited us to, talk about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. That Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for all life, not only human society, but animal society. And even beyond that, it would protect the non-moving parts of society, like the environment. The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction. It puts us in contact with vibration that enlivens us, that sharpens our intelligence, that gives us a verifiable purpose, not a purpose in the sense of, the way the military gives a purpose, or the way that a job gives a purpose within the parameters of the job or within the parameters of the purpose. But the purpose of the Sankirtan movement gives us a purpose within the context of all existence and within the highest boundaries of what the soul is capable of comprehending. The highest thing that the soul is capable of comprehending is existential. It's beyond just a temporary material designation, but it has to do with love. It has to do with self-realization, respect for everyone, and it also collapses at something very personal, and so it has to do with Krishna directly, and who Krishna loves, Srimati Radharani, directly, and who helps Srimati Radharani, you know, the gopis and the manjaris, directly, and our disciplic succession, which is assisting them. And so it connects us into a very rich tapestry of personality, and it's all, but it's also simultaneously very, very personal and nuanced. So in the material world, you can sometimes have one or the other. You know, the more personal that your purpose is, the more esoteric and removed it is. Like artists or scientists that study one specific school of thought, you know, the more that they study, the more specific and removed it is. Like you have somebody that studies, for example, the creation, that studies language, and then within all language, some people study made up languages, and within that, some people study Elvish as written by J.R.R. Tolkien. It's such a specialized school of thought that they can maybe talk to two people in a population of 8 billion. So they found their purpose, which is, you know, like an intellectual pursuit, but it's so specific, there's very few people they can communicate with. And on the other hand, you have people that don't have a purpose, that are just, you know, generally helping others, and they're jack of all trades, as they say. But that is sometimes not respected in the world because it's not specific. And in the world, sometimes specificity is rewarded. You know, the richest people are the ones that can do very specific things. But bhakti, or self-realization, is both. It's both accessible. You know, a devotee can speak with everyone because they can recognize that everyone is a living being that's loved by God and has a relationship with God. And also, they are working on their own personal relationship or personal type of service to God in either cooking or distributing literature, or they like cleaning things. There are some devotees that just build things. So they build structures for the celebrations, and they build the chariots for the Lord's Ratha Yatra, or, you know, they construct temples, or they construct altars. And there's other devotees that cook. There's a devotee here in Los Angeles that's cooked every single Sunday feast from the time that they started doing it, which now has been over 30 years. And, you know, they're the kind of devotee that can cook with their eyes closed, or they don't need to they just eyeball everything because, like, they have the measurement in their heart. And other devotees are, you know, good at yeah, just organizing, you know. So yeah, in spiritual life, it's we get both. We get high specificity and also, you know, general broad-minded or broad relationships with others. So here we're being asked to show favor, to share. That's one stimulus. This is one way that devotional service itself and the instructions we've been given by our teachers, it protects us from forgetting about personality and for just thinking about ourselves. We're supposed to think about others in the way that somebody thought about us before we even knew it. I mean, every one of us can trace, even if you were born in a family of devotees, we can trace who cared about us enough to teach us about who Krishna is. What are the names? How do you offer food? And what's this? And what somebody took their time to give us everything that we have now. Everything that we can say about Krishna now was given to us by someone else. And so we're being invited now to do that also, to care. Bhakti is all about waking us up to the responsibility of caring about others and of the privilege of being able to care about others. Also, it's a special thing. And yeah. And then finally is the Mahabhagavata, who sees everything in the Lord and everything of the Lord, and also they see their eternal relationship with the Lord. There's nothing in their purview in sight except the Lord. So this is another way of saying somebody who's steeped in love of God. Now it's worth noting that Srila Prabhupada wrote this first canto in India before he even came and saw us. So if anyone's more interested in this subject, he goes into it in depth in the Nectar of Instruction. It's a very, he describes it very nicely. And it's worth the read. Also, beyond that would be the Madhurya Kadambini by Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur, which goes into this in a more disambiguated way. Why this is good is because it gives us an idea of where we are in devotional service and also what the right type of effort is. For example, it sounds very appealing to be this Mahabhagavata who sees everything in relationship with the Lord. For these devotees are generally beyond the rules and regulations because of the scriptures, because they're being guided now by their personal attraction for God. Now, sometimes that's appealing to spiritualists because we're getting away from the world because we don't like the rules. And so we hear about this person that also doesn't follow rules, and it might inspire us to what is it called? Prematurely adopt the external behaviors of this very advanced soul. But when you read the details of how this person thinks and how this type of person feels and what motivates why they act like that externally, it should humble us to the depth of the heart of these pure devotees. For example, here Maharaj Parikit is being described as a Mahabhagavata, and we see his behavior is that within the womb he was looking at the Lord and praying to him. Now, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the third canto, in the 31st or 32nd chapter, which I'm reading now, it says that the living being, while within the womb, develops awareness of his situation, and in that plight begins to pray to the Lord, please get me out of this. And I promise that if you get me out of this, I will never take shelter of a material womb again. And it's very graphic in how it describes the living entity's precarious situation within the womb. Now, out after birth, we're kind of traumatized by passage of the birth canal, and we forget that. In the same way that, I mean, I won't ask anyone to raise their hands, or I won't ask anyone to get rid of their videos, but how many of us have prayed to, if Krishna or God, if you get me out of the situation, I promise I'll never do it again, and done it again. So, but Maharaj Parikit here is different. He's praying to Krishna, let me, always be conscious of you. And they say that after he was born, he kept that promise. He didn't forget about Krishna once. He didn't want to stop seeing Krishna ever. So that's why he's described as a Mahabhagavata. So we're given that literature to give us a chance. Well, what's the right effort then? I shouldn't expect this of myself if I just learned to see that the Lord is in the temple. So what is the behavior of a Kanishta Adhikari? And then maybe trying to add flavor. Well, what does a Madhyama Adhikari do? And one of the suggestions by the devotees is to share. That's one way that we can develop the qualities of this second class devotee, is to share. And there's two reasons. There's two reasons that I can think of. One is because the world needs it. It's a way of reciprocating with what's been given to us. But most importantly, it's what was instructed to us by Prabhupada. Prabhupada, repeating or following the instruction of his spiritual master to preach this knowledge in English, also asked that of his followers. And so good students listen to their teachers, and it's as simple as that. Prabhupada is teaching us how to love Krishna, and one of his principal instructions was how you love Krishna is you share Krishna with others. So if there's any questions on those points on the Madhyama Adhikari or any comments on it, please feel free to share. I went a little over. We have 4 minutes left, but I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank you all for giving me a chance to be here. It's always enlivening to get to speak on the Bhagavatam and to do it in front of the audience of devotees. I know that today in Portland, you're celebrating the appearance of Nitai Sachinandana. And one thing that I was thinking of was that there's a special verse in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, those who understand the nature of my appearance and activities within this world never take birth again. And I was thinking about how this whole chapter is about the appearance of a pure devotee, and the appearance of the pure devotee is inextricable from the appearance of Krishna, and that this is the day that the devotees, decided to inaugurate and to welcome Nitai Sachinandana, who's supervised so many celebrations and so many initiations and the visit of so many pure devotees, and is still supervising devotees across the world. I know that there's devotees that are not only in Portland that are allowed in this yatra to participate. And I've heard it described that they're so merciful. And so, to be involved in any way in the appearance of the Lord and the appearance of his pure devotees is a very special thing. And Hare Krishna, it's very wonderful. Congratulations to everyone to be able to take care of them and to be in their presence there. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for that wonderful lecture. Very engaging, lots of contemplation of application in this world, trying to understand the subtleties of spiritual life. Thank you very much. We miss you and wish you were here, but I know your blessings are there for us. So thank you. Hope to see you sometime in the near future. Any devotees have questions, comments, realizations, clarifications they want to share?
Thank you, Darashbu. Thank you for the wonderful, thought-provoking, would say, lecture. And as usual, as always, you give me a fresh perspective on the verses from Sri Prabhupada. It's perfect as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Did you want to scroll over at some particular point, Dhanaraj Prabhu?
No, I just wanted to keep it there in case anyone wanted to read it.
Yes. Thank you so much for taking time and still doing the service in spite of being in LA and all the other obligations I'm sure you have there. So it's really nice to see how people talk a lot about technology and how it brings people together, and most of the time in the world we don't see that. But it's nice to see how everybody can come together just glorifying the pure devotees of the Lord, and the literature that does that is very wonderful. So take care. Have a wonderful Sunday and upcoming week. Hope to see you at some time in the near future. Please convey our obeisances to your father. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Thank you, dear devotees.
Hare Krishna, Dhanaraj Prabhu. Thank you so much. Really liked your various types, descriptions of the various adhikaris.
So Dhanaraj Prabhu, you can see through YouTube or Facebook today's festivities if you have the time. Okay, we'll all meet up next weekend. So take care. Hare Krishna. Bye bye.
Hare Krishna.